So I thought today I'd talk a bit about the flooded meadows of the Pantanal wetlands in Brazil. This is a habitat I'm pretty knowledgeable about now, and I've talked about it before, but I thought what we'd do in today's video is we would look at some of the habitat, and then we'd look at how to set up a tank that represents this habitat. I'm going to start with some footage from 2016, which is when I made my second trip to the Pantanal, and I still didn't know a lot and I had a lot to learn, but I thought I'd show you some of that old footage of my first journey into the southern Pantanal region. One of the things I really love is driving along these narrow tracks through the Pantanal and crossing multiple bridges, and in every bridge there are these pools and ditches that are draining the flooded meadows beyond, and they're a great place to see all sorts of animals, fishes and plants and birds as well. The roads can be challenging, they can get flooded themselves, they turn to mud in the wet season and dry dust in the dry season. And actually our car got stuck in a flooded meadow for a while and we needed some help in order to get out. It sank right down into the mud. Of course, one of the best ways to explore the Pantanal is by boat, and the river's got lots to offer. But I'm really drawn to the flooded meadows, and in the wet season there's real opportunity to explore that in shallow boat, by jeep, by horseback or kayak. Well, of course, there are many different animals to see in the Pantanal. My real passion is fishes. And the flooded meadows are really, really rich in all sorts of fish. And many of them you can see quite easily from a boat, or if you're brave enough, get in with a snorkel and a mask and have a look around. You may encounter fishes such as Oscar cichlids, Astronautus. Also encounter things like wolffish, the Hoplias malabaricus, especially in flooded meadows. My favourite thing to see in really shallow water, however, are the freshwater stingrays, the Potamotrichum family, particularly Potamotrichum multuro, which is a beautiful, beautiful animal. One thing I love to observe is the way that the rays will bury themselves in the mud and the silt to hide from predators or from us, and they can really make themselves disappear, completely cover themselves up. There's loads of silt and sediment, and then the ray is kind of deep in the mud, and then when they take off again they're covered in all the sediment. But you don't need to be in the water to see this. You can observe this kind of behavior from a shallow boat. However, for me the best bit is to get into the water, no matter how shallow, and start exploring. So on this second trip, I went to stay at a small lodge in the Pantanal, and I started exploring the flooded meadows that were near to the lodge itself. And I got to see black widow tetras in the wild for the first time. In the meadows, the main plants were Cara sp, Ceratophyllum demersum, also known as hornwort, Maiaca fluviatilis, the one with the little white flowers you can see in there, different species of nymphea, different water lilies, and lots of echinodorus, different species of Amazon sword plants, as well as Eleocharis, hair grasses.
So the water here, this is a flooded meadow, which dries out in the dry season, obviously. And it is full of what look like Eleocharis, dwarf nymphea, Ceratophyllum. Found a number of Cara species. I'm not sure exactly what kind of species they are. And I think black widow tetras in here as well. There's also seems to be Maiaca fluviatilis and some Isoetes species. I'm not exactly sure which ones. Unfortunately today is a bit cloudy. Oh, here's an Akara. How about that? Not bad. So these basically flooded meadows dry out in the summer and all the fish life pretty much gets eaten. Birds crowd around, grab everything that they can. Caiman come in. So it's pretty much a feast for terrestrial animals. Not so great for the fish. But at the end of the wet season, where we are now, the water is lowering. And lots of fish are still trapped in these pools, which will successively dry out in the next few months. The water is absolutely teeming with larvae. There's plenty of food in here for the various fish. So some snakes here apparently. Water's pretty pleasant. It's probably about 21 degrees. Now here I think are some black widow tetras, which I've just disturbed. Also looks like there might be some Monkhausia sanctifilumine red-eye tetras in here. I'm going to head back to the middle. Comes up at its deepest here, about my thighs. It's the other side of the road. You can see some Akara swimming around. Some larger tetras. You'll even find fish in a roadside puddle like this. This can have been here for a few months. When the flood waters recede, small tetras and the like are stuck. Flooded meadow. There's an Echinodora species in there, Eleocharis, kinds of weird and wonderful things. It's Eleocharis down here. This is full small species of tetra, small cichlids, Akara, late Akara. See some of them zooming off right now. And natural habitat for sword plants and hairgrass, Isoetes species, dwarf nymphea. You can see small fish leaping around there. This would be a fun biotope to recreate. A very shallow tank, maybe 10 centimetre tank, open top, little tetras in there. Would be quite cool, quite easy. And this will dry out in a few weeks and will be a bare meadow.
So we've seen there a little bit of my experience of a flooded meadow way back in 2016, and I didn't know very much actually. And I thought, well, let me show you a flooded meadow biotope tank I set up for my Aquatic Habitats book, which is going to be coming out next year. So this will be a bit of a teaser for those of you who've stuck with the video this long. I thought I'd show you a bit of the step-by-step of how to go about to create this meadow habitat. And there's a bit of inspiration in these photos here, which I've taken in flooded habitats since that early trip. So we're going to start with our nice empty tank. This is a 90p tank, so it's 90 by 45 by 45. I've got a light background on there with the green to yellow gradient foil. This will really help us create that ambient sensation of a green flooded meadow, quite a bright environment. And this will provide a long-term home for all the fishes that we've used in here and accommodate the plants which we're going to use, some of which can get quite large. So we begin by adding some aquatic plant soil. This is quite a fine powdery soil which will simulate the sediment and silty substrate you find in the Pantanal meadows. It's quite dark, earthy colour, but it'll also be very nutritious for the plants. I think in this case I've used the ADA soil powder, which is ideal for the Echinodorus that we'll be using here. Once we've got that substrate in, we're going to sculpt it out. I use a sculpting tool, but you can use your hands as well. And I'm trying to create a deeper corner where the bulk of the planting will be, and that's going down to a much shallower area, which will be a bit more open. Then we start to add the bones of our hardscape and our display. So I've used some branchy manzanita wood, which I pre-soaked in my pond for a few weeks, to create a triangular layout, so it's flowing from the right side of the tank up towards the left side of the tank. That's really pleasing for the eye just to follow. It sort of allows us to take in the story of the display without even knowing that we're doing it. I've used some dwarf water lilies, Nymphea sp. I can't quite remember which species, but they're essentially a pond lily, a dwarf species that I've added in here. So I've pushed them in to the substrate, and they'll also really benefit from the nutritious substrate that we've used. They'll create some surface cover for our fishes, and those stems create a bit of an architectural element to the display. Plus it mimics the biotope. As I said, some of the plants we're going to use are very large. I couldn't get exactly the Echinodorus that I wanted. I think here I've used Cordifolius. I wanted Macrophyllus at the time. I didn't have any. I've now got some. But this will grow right up and out the tank. Really nice plant. Very bold, big textures, and looks like a species that would be found in those habitats. And I just love sort of plants anyway, so any excuse to get one in. So I've now added some more soil plants, began to bulk up that display. You can see that really empty space on the right hand side has now been turned into really vibrant, bold elements included. The large broadleaf sword plants, there's going to be the red undersides of the Nymphea. It's going to be quite busy, but that also provides habitat for our fishes. So we've got an open area where they can swim around, and we've got a more peaceful, calm area where they can hide if they wish to. I then started adding some Myriophyllum aquatica. I resisted the temptation to add Cara or Ceratophyllum in here because it gets so busy. But after adding the Myriophyllum, the bulk of which on the right, I started to add some Maiaca fluviatilis, which is less angry in the way it grows. It's a bit more easy to look after it long term, but can be quite a demanding plant sometimes. I then went in and added some Eliocharis montevidensis. This sort of simulates some of the larger hairgrass species that we find in the meadows, but also looks quite similar to many of the Isoete species which you find there and which are not available in the hobby. And these would also create a bit more fine structured in the open areas and broken lines of sight as well to keep our fishes happy and feeling secure. After planting, it's time to fill with water. This ADA, I think it's the Malaya substrate, clouds the water really badly. So I always use a plastic bag for the water to flow onto, and I've used a mixture of rain and tap water for this display, preheated to 24 degrees so it doesn't shock the plants either. So nice soft water which our plants and our Pantanal fishes will really appreciate. Despite my best efforts, it does stay pretty cloudy for a while, but you can already see with that light background of the green-yellow foil it looks quite like that sort of green vibe ambience that we saw in the earlier videos. There's lots going on, it's busy, there's loads of plants, there's cover, and yet it's not crowded. There's that open area for fishes to use as well as the area of cover. And it's, well, you'll see hopefully in the final photo, I think it's quite a nice display. This is after it had settled a bit and the water's cleared. You can see the myriophyllum growing up to the surface, you can see the nymphea. I've added a few pistia and other floating plants in there. The soft substrate will be great for the cichlids which are going in, which are Laeticara dorsigera, and we added some black widow tetras, Gymnocorimbus tennitsai. And I really like the vibrance of this display. With this display, I was also thinking about running costs. So this is essentially a room temperature tank. Both fish, the Laeticara and the black widows, are pretty hardy. They don't mind tap water. They will appreciate soft water, but they can get along fine in hard tap water. Low temperatures, easy to look after. Really a simple display. The plants are fairly hardy apart from the Maiaca, which can be a little bit funny. It does prefer softer water. But with CO2 on this display, plants will be flourishing in no time. The Laeticara got quite busy moving through all the plants and exploring really, and sort of picking up little bits of algae just as they would in the wild. My examples weren't very coloured up. If you Google Laeticara dorsigera, you will see these fish are stunning when they're in breeding colours. The males have these beautiful purples, blues, they're lovely. Mine were juveniles, they'd gone in, they were a bit stressed, I guess initially, but they coloured up. The black widows, meanwhile, actually look really, really nice. You could begin to see the sort of hints of purplish metallic colours on the body just behind the gills, and they were flitting about all over the place. I only added a few, about 12 or so, because they can get pretty large. I've collected some which almost, hard to fit into the palm of my hand at times. You wouldn't think it, but it's true. So they can reach a good size. They can get bigger than the largest one you see in my hand, so just bear that in mind when you add them to your own displays. In this display, the males were flitting about and displaying, the females were not too interested, but it was really nice just to see them in a biotope context. So often these fish are just sort of afterthoughts thrown into a tank where they're not celebrated. So they're actually a fish that can be the main feature in a tank if you cater the tank to them. I really, really like them. They're easy, they're hardy. They have a reputation as fin nippers, but it's only if you don't keep them in large enough numbers. And mine were wonderfully curious and always exploring and behaving just as they would in the wild, really, with the display behavior, foraging for food. I really had to reevaluate. I'd seen them in the wild so often, but when you have them at home and you still fall in love with them, that's really something wonderful. I'll leave you with this little clip of my feet in a murky Pantanal lake with a few black widow tetras swimming around whilst I'm getting a pedicure from a number of fish, including Stellogrammus kennedi. You can see the black widows there. Anyway, I hope this video has inspired you to try and get some Laeticara and some black widows and create your own Pantanal meadow biotope display. Thank you everyone for watching and take care.